what we do. It's a range of things, and what I'm going to talk about, not so much about me, because, a quick nutshell really, I was born in a very tiny little village in Cheshire. 80 people lived in the village. Because when I was 10, we were given a project by the primary school to do your street, and there were only 4 people in my street. So they said do the whole village, which I did. Had an interest in the arts, was steered away from it all the way by teachers and parents into the proper job. So I actually ended up working in the ICI chemical factory in Runcorn for 4 years and served an engineering apprenticeship, and then got out in the 5th year. Having tried to get out incrementally through it, but like you do 1 year and they say, well, try another year. And then you try and get out and they say, well, you're halfway through now, so you might as well finish it. So I went through that routine. I got into the arts then with no qualifications because I didn't go to college or art school or any of those things. So I found my own way into it. The reason it's called Chrysalis Arts, the way in was to work with other companies voluntarily to begin with until you kind of got paid, and then working as freelancers. And I'll come back to that. That way of working, it's been touched on by a few of the others. The kind of era of having a full-time job, which is what was around when I was a kid. Basically, with ICI, if I stayed there, it was a job for life. You were guaranteed that job pretty much until you retired. If even having worked in the chemical works, you managed to live long enough to retire, which was another issue with it. So we've been at this for 30 years, and the freelance aspect is freelancers work in networks. So what we've set up in North Yorkshire are a couple of networks. Creative North Yorkshire is all the creative industries: music, theatre, dance, visual arts, fine arts, the whole range. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the structural stuff that's behind this, because we kind of have the stories that it's quite a fragmented thing, but there are initiatives from central government right down through local government, through development agencies that support these things. So Creative North Yorkshire is about those kind of single people, freelance, working in small studios all over this area. You'd be surprised, and I'll come to that in a minute, how many. And this is the kind of thing that they're doing in terms of the agencies and the government, what they're contributing to. It's only in the last 15 years that this has really been taken seriously in any way. It was, certainly in my childhood, it was like get a proper job, don't go into the arts. It's now much more considered to be a proper job. Social media is helping tremendously with stuff like this. You'll be much more aware of this, and it's been talked about quite a lot, but it's a communication system that's really opened up possibilities for working on your own. Some of the statistics: York and North Yorkshire, this big kind of green, sometimes brown landscape that we live in, we think it's got a lot to do with agriculture. It's got almost nothing to do with agriculture in terms of the economy. The return from agriculture into the economy is less than 1%. The return from creative industries is about 16%. So we're actually much more economically productive than agriculture, although it looks like it's all about agriculture when you're walking around there. So this is where it gets interesting. When you hear statistics on the news or any of those things, they're talking about something that quite often doesn't involve the creative industries because of a thing called value-added tax, VAT. Most people work below the VAT threshold. You have to earn more than £65,000, I think now, to get VAT registered. Most people are earning below that. If you're earning 40, 50, you're doing okay. Most people are below that. So they're not being counted in government figures. And what we've tried to do over the last 6, 7 years is try and get an idea of what's going on below there. Burns-Owe in Partnership have worked on this with us. And this is a mapping exercise of the creative industries in York and North Yorkshire. They're not all in here for sure, but you can see just how many they are and just how spread out they are. Main thing this tells you is if you go into this, you're not alone. The only places where there aren't any, here and here, are moorland. There actually aren't any people there. And sheep haven't got into creative industries yet. But that shows you just how many people are out there. All over the place, in studios, in workshops, doing stuff of a creative nature. Something else that's happening, and with the local government cuts, is some buildings are becoming available. This is a building in Lancashire, actually, which we worked on a feasibility study for. There's now 40 artists in here, in studios. So that things like the Trust, the Heritage Trust North West, recycle the building, do it up, let it out as artist studios. With the government cuts, a lot of government buildings, local government buildings, are starting to become available. There could be more of this kind of opportunity of workshop space in terms of what's going to be happening in the next 5-10 years. And this, looking for creative, tolerant places. There's much talk about this placemaking, about what comes first really. An interesting town, Ripon, Thirsk, are they interesting towns which creative people gravitate to? Or do the creative people start to create them as interesting towns? Places where the cafe's shut at 5 o'clock like Skipton, it's a bit difficult really to kind of get into networking of having a drink after work. But the idea of Creative Skipton is a possibility. In tourism, it's huge. The biggest economic activity in York and North Yorkshire is tourism, by far. And the link of cultural and creative activities to tourism is huge, especially if you're in the arts. If you're selling artwork, and the cultural tourist, which is a much prized asset because cultural tourists have money. There are a lot of tourists who come to North Yorkshire, walkers, and they come in a car and they get the boots on, they walk to the hills, they eat the sandwiches, drink the tea out of the flask, go back to the car and drive home. They've spent nothing. They haven't contributed to anything in terms of the local economy. Cultural tourists come in, they buy paintings, they buy photographs, they spend money in cafes, they stay overnight in hotels. They're the top target. And it's future growth, basically. It's predicted by people in central government areas that it's one of the key areas. Healthcare, obviously, green economy, environmental assets, and creative industries are the three areas that are predicted for growth. Art Connections is a visual arts support network. So this is about this single artist out in the middle of nowhere working on your own. How do you get your stuff to market? Because you're spending all your time making it. A joint marketing initiative through a network is a very good way of doing it, rather than trying to do everything yourself. You come across artists and sole traders quite often trying to do everything. Trying to make the stuff, sell the stuff, administrate the stuff. You can only do so many things, and if you're making it, then it's good to get other people to start helping with the other stuff. Open Studios is a kind of classic. This turns over quite a lot of money for artists in North Yorkshire. They open the studios for 2 weekends a year. The draw for the customer is the nosy factor. This is the place they can't get into at any other time of the year. They can actually get into the artist studios. So it's doing these things in terms of tourism. Big agencies like Welcome to Yorkshire are very interested in this kind of stuff because it's niche market. You've got to come to North Yorkshire to experience a North Yorkshire Open Studio. You can't go to Suffolk and do it. You've got to come here. You've got to stay for 2 weekends to do it properly. So you're contributing in other ways. So they're selling 120,000 odd of sales over 2 weekends. But when you crunch that through, that's £1.5 million worth of contributing to the local economy in terms of them buying meals, accommodation, all those other things that people do while they're out shopping. These are serious customers. These artists, some of them are selling £8,000 paintings in these 2 weekends. That's the top sale. A lot of 3,000 stuff, a lot of 4, 2, obviously a lot of 100, 300, 500 pounders. They're the bulk of it, but they do sell thousands of pound paintings. And this is the kind of support stuff, extending practice. We're looking to do more of this. This gave this set of artists £4,000 each to create a commission about York and North Yorkshire, and these were mentored. So Megan got mentored, got a guitar tune, got into a recording studio for the first time, and she's produced her first CD. It's that kind of step. Elizabeth wrote a book about the street she lives in York, which she'd always wanted to do. She interviewed everybody in the street, and there's a chapter about everybody in the street. Matt Anderson, so it's stepping people's careers up. Hester got an exhibition at the Harrogate Mercer. Paul Mills worked with the Yorkshire Film Archive in setting poetry to archive film. And so a little bit now about this kind of future. This is 2009, into the age of uncertainty. We're still a bit unsure, I think, about where we're going. And this is much talked about today and in other places. The new young entrepreneurs at your kitchen table with a laptop, with a mobile phone, plugged into the world. This is the future way of working, and it is potentially a very interesting way of working. I touched on this at the beginning, self-initiated projects. It's how people like me started. The reason it's called Chrysalis Arts is we're actually working with another freelancer, and we got a job at a thing called Butterfly Fair in Cheshire. And you can kind of see where it's going. In the corner of the pub, they said we wanted a name for the programme. So somebody said Chrysalis Arts, Butterfly Fair, Chrysalis Arts. So you end up with it. And it sticks for 30 years. So you need to be careful when you pick a name in the corner of a pub and think, is it going to still resonate in 30 years' time? Luckily, it seems to be doing all right. But this is a way of starting. Instead of applying for jobs and getting turned down, and there aren't many jobs, and job hunting and all that, actually start the whole thing yourself. This proposes that existing infrastructures are not to everyone's satisfaction. I think that's pretty plain at the moment. They're not. The existing infrastructures are in poor shape. So actually kicking something off yourself, you can set your own agenda, develop your own artistic practice, set yourself challenges, basically go into business yourself as a sole trader. These are the kind of things that happen. It kind of seems like hard work, but it's not when you start to do it. And once you start to do something interesting, people become interested. So you start to get a two-way communication going on. Instead of just sitting there thinking, I'll apply for another job and see what happens. You start to do something interesting, you're more likely to either get a job or get more work. Especially talk to anyone who can offer advice. I don't know if people have heard the Grayson Perry programme, but he said basically, for the first 10 years, do anything that comes your way. Don't be fussy, anything. That's the way people get started. Once you've got enough going, then you can get fussy. Applications for funding. This one, you see, organise an opening event. The classic one here is Damien Hirst. The first show he did in London, he organised himself in a warehouse. And he invited all the great and good of London. And much to his surprise, they came. And from then on, he never looked back. But that was literally him hiring a shed, sticking his work in it, and inviting them and hoping. And that paid off. Document it, photograph it, because it is a different world. You need to build your own portfolio. And something we're heading into is the green stuff, the slow art, slow movement, thinking about all that kind of environmental stuff, which is, as I said, those three growth areas, health, green economy and creative industries. If you can start to link any two of those three, or even all three together, then you're kind of hedging your bets more than just sticking in one. And always thank the people who support you, especially if they've given you money. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.